The alarms screamed through every corridor of Cora Station. Captain Yuna ran toward the command center, her boots pounding against the metal floor. Behind her, scientists scattered in panic, their papers and data pads flying everywhere. She had been drinking coffee in the observation deck just 3 minutes ago. Now her station was under attack. The station shook violently. Explosions echoed from the outer rings. Through the windows, Yuna could see ships. Massive warships with dark hulls and red markings. Vrekith ships. Her heart sank. The Vrekith Empire was known across the galaxy for one thing. They conquered worlds and showed no mercy. She reached the command center and grabbed her communications officer by the shoulder. "Get me a line to Earth Command, now. I'm trying, Captain. They're jamming all our frequencies." Another explosion rocked the station. The lights flickered. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. Yuna pulled up the security feeds on her screen. What she saw made her blood run cold. Vrekith soldiers were already inside. They had breached the docking bay and were moving through the residential sections. "All security teams fall back to Section 7, she ordered into her comm. "Protect the civilians. Get them to the escape pods." Her brother Teho's face flashed in her mind. He was in the biology lab on the lower level. She opened a direct channel. "Teho, if you can hear me, get out of there. Head to the emergency pods. Do you copy?" Static answered her. The jamming was too strong. Yuna grabbed her sidearm and turned to her small security team. There were only 12 of them. The station was a research facility, not a military base. They had never expected an attack. Why would anyone attack a science station? They studied plants and microorganisms. They weren't a threat to anyone. "Listen up," she told her team. "We buy time for the civilians to escape. That's our only job now. Understood?" They nodded, their faces pale but determined. They moved out into the corridor, setting up defensive positions at the main intersection. Through her earpiece, Yuna heard screaming. Gunfire. The sounds of her station dying. Down in the biology lab, Teho heard the explosions but didn't understand what was happening. He was focused on his microscope, examining a new specimen of alien algae. His assistant ran into the room, her eyes wide with terror. "We have to go. The station is under attack." Teho looked up, confused. "Attack by who? Does it matter? Come on." They ran toward the emergency stairs, but they were too late. A squad of Vrekith soldiers blocked their path. The aliens were huge, nearly 7 feet tall, with gray-scaled skin and yellow eyes. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons that looked too big for any human to lift. "Please," Teho said, raising his hands. "We're just scientists. We're not armed." The lead soldier, who wore markings that indicated high rank, stepped forward. He looked at Teho and his assistant like they were insects. Then he raised his weapon. In the command center, Dr. Minho watched in horror through the security cameras. He was the station's chief diplomat, responsible for coordinating with the various alien species who visited Cora Station. He had met dozens of different species. Most were peaceful. Some were cold and distant. But he had never seen anything like this. The Vrekith weren't just attacking. They were executing people. He watched them move through the residential section, going room by room. They shot anyone they found. Old researchers, young interns. It didn't matter. They showed no hesitation, no mercy. Minho's hands shook as he recorded everything. The station's main computer was still functioning. If he could upload this footage to the network, if he could get it out before the station was completely destroyed, then maybe someone would know what happened here. Maybe someone would care. He worked frantically, his fingers flying over the keyboard. The Vrekith were getting closer to the command center. He could hear them in the corridor outside. Heavy footsteps. The hiss of their alien language. The upload bar on his screen crawled forward. 70%, 80%. The door to the command center exploded inward. Vrekith soldiers poured in. Minho hit the final button and the upload completed. The footage was out. The galaxy would see. A massive Vrekith pushed through the soldiers. This one wore elaborate armor decorated with trophies from other conquests. Bones, skulls, pieces of different species. He had to be their leader. The warlord looked at the humans cowering in the command center and laughed. The sound was horrible, like metal scraping against stone. "I am Warlord Thaxel," the creature announced in heavily accented but understandable human language. "This station is now property of the Vrekith Empire." One of the human officers stepped forward, trembling. "Please, we can negotiate. We have supplies, research data, anything you want." Thaxel looked at him for a long moment. Then casually, he shot the officer in the chest. The human fell without a sound. The Vrekith Empire does not negotiate, Thaxel said. Captain Yuna and her security team heard the gunshot from their position. They knew the command center had fallen. Yuna checked her tactical display. Most of the escape pods had launched. At least some people would survive. But the casualty count was devastating. Over 200 dead already. And the attack had started less than an hour ago. Captain, we need to fall back, one of her team members said. We can't hold this position. Yuna wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. They were out of ammunition and completely outnumbered. Fall back to Emergency Bay 3. We'll take the last pods. They moved through the damaged corridors past bodies and debris. Yuna tried not to look at the faces of the dead. Some of them had been her friends. People she ate lunch with, played cards with during the long nights in space. They reached the emergency bay and found one pod remaining. But as they approached, Vrekith soldiers emerged from the shadows. Yuna's team opened fire with their last few rounds, but it wasn't enough. One by one, her people fell. Yuna managed to reach the pod and slam the door shut. Through the small window, she saw the Vrekith soldiers raising their weapons. She hit the launch button and the pod shot away from the station just as they fired. From the safety of the pod, Yuna watched Chorus Station through the rear camera. The Vrekith warships surrounded it like predators around wounded prey. Then they fired. The station exploded in a brilliant flash of light. 300 people had been on that station. Yuna knew that fewer than 50 had escaped. She thought of Tejo. She had told him to run. Had he made it to a pod? Was he out here somewhere, floating in space like her? Or had he died in the biology lab, surrounded by his precious specimens? The pod's emergency beacon activated automatically, sending out a distress signal. Help would come eventually. Human ships would find the survivors. But as Yuna floated in the darkness, watching the debris field that had been her home, she made a silent promise. The Vrekith Empire would pay for this. Every single one of them. The footage from Chorus Station spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every species with access to the Galactic network saw it. The executions. The massacre. The casual cruelty of Warlord Thaxel as he killed unarmed. Scientists begging for their lives. Dr. Minho's final transmission had reached hundreds of worlds. Before the Vrekith could stop it. Within 24 hours, the Galactic Council called an emergency session. The council chamber was a massive sphere that floated in neutral space, accessible to all member species. Representatives from 43 different civilizations gathered, their translation devices humming as they argued in dozens of languages. Ambassador Jiwan stood at the human delegation's platform. She was a career diplomat who had spent 15 years building relationships with alien species. She believed in cooperation and peaceful solutions. But as she watched the footage again on the chamber's main screen, something inside her hardened. The evidence is clear, she said, her voice steady despite the anger burning in her chest. The Vrekith Empire committed an act of unprovoked aggression against a peaceful research station. They murdered 300 civilians. This was not war. This was slaughter, the council members murmured among themselves. The chairman, a tall creature called a Zelthari with blue skin and 4 arms, raised one hand for silence. The council acknowledges the tragedy of Chorus Station, the chairman said carefully. However, we must consider the broader implications. The Vrekith Empire controls 17 star systems. They have the largest military fleet in this sector. Direct confrontation would be costly. Costly? Jiwan couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. They murdered innocents. What cost could be higher than allowing that to go unpunished? A Vrekith representative, not Thaxel, but another high-ranking officer, stood at his platform. The Vrekith Empire acknowledges that the situation at Chorus Station escalated beyond intentions. We are prepared to offer compensation. Territorial rights to the mineral-rich asteroids in Sector 9. Reparations equal to 50 billion galactic credits. In exchange, we request that the Council recognize this incident as closed. Several Council members nodded. Jiwan stared at them in shock. They were actually considering this. What about justice? She demanded. What about putting the ones responsible on trial? The Vrekith officer smiled, showing sharp teeth. The Empire does not surrender its warriors to foreign courts. This is our final offer. Take it or face the consequences. The chairman looked uncomfortable. Ambassador Jiwan, perhaps your government would be willing to consider this generous proposal. Credits and territory would help rebuild and strengthen your colonies. Jiwan looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Some looked sympathetic. Most looked away. They were afraid of the Vrekith. They wanted this problem to disappear quietly so they could go back to their comfortable lives. She thought of the footage. The screaming scientists, the children in the residential section, Teho, the young biologist who had sent her a message just days before the attack, excited about discovering a new form of bacteria. No, Jiwan said quietly. Excuse me, the chairman said. Jiwan raised her voice so everyone in the chamber could hear. Humanity does not negotiate with murderers. We will not accept blood money. We will not pretend this didn't happen. Justice will be served with or without the council's support. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. The Vrekith officer laughed. Your species controls only 8 small colonies. You have no military power. You cannot possibly challenge the Empire. Jiwan gathered her documents and turned to leave. The rest of the human delegation followed her. As she reached the exit, she turned back one last time. We'll see, she said. Then they were gone. On Earth, in the underground command center beneath Geneva, President Soman listened to the recording of the council session. Her advisors sat around the long conference table, their faces grim. Admiral Hyunwoo, the highest-ranking officer in the United Human Command, pulled up a tactical display. The Vrekith Empire's military capabilities are substantial. They have approximately 800 warships of various classes. Their technology is comparable to ours in most areas, superior in shield systems. What are our numbers? President Soman asked. 347 ships currently operational, another 100 in construction, but they won't be ready for months. So we're outnumbered more than 2 to 1. Yes, Madam President. One of the civilian advisors cleared his throat. With respect, Madam President, perhaps we should reconsider the Council's proposal. The territory they're offering is valuable. We could use those resources to strengthen our defenses, prepare for future threats. President Soman looked at him for a long moment. And what message does that send? That human lives can be purchased? That as long as you pay enough, you can murder our people without consequence? Of course not, but we have to be realistic. A war with the Vrekith could cost millions of lives, and bowing to them could cost our humanity. President Soman stood and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of the city. Millions of people going about their lives unaware of the decision being made in this room. She thought about Earth's history. The wars, the genocides, the times when people stood by and did nothing while evil triumphed. Humanity had learned those lessons the hard way, paid for them with oceans of blood. I grew up learning about the mistakes of the past, she said quietly. The times when people chose comfort over justice, safety over morality. Every time they told themselves it was the practical choice, the realistic choice, and every time they were wrong. She turned back to her advisors. We draw the line here. No negotiations, no appeasement. The Vrekith Empire will face justice for what they did at Kora Station. Admiral Hyunwoo nodded slowly. Then we should begin preparations immediately. The Vrekith will see this as a declaration of war. Let them, President Soman said. Draft a message to all human colonies. Tell them what happened. Tell them what we've decided. And tell them why. 6 hours later, President Soman's message broadcast across every human world. She stood before the cameras, her expression calm but her words carrying the weight of history. My fellow humans, by now you have all seen the footage from Kora Station. You have seen what the Vrekith Empire did to our people, to our friends, to our families. She paused, letting the words sink in. The Galactic Council has proposed that we accept compensation and move on. They believe that territory and credits are equivalent to justice. They are wrong. The lives lost at Kora Station cannot be purchased. They cannot be bargained away. They will not be forgotten. I know what you're thinking. The Vrekith Empire is powerful. They have more ships, more soldiers. Fighting them will be costly. You're right, it will be. But some things are worth fighting for. Justice is worth fighting for. The principle that innocent lives matter is worth fighting for. We will not negotiate with murderers. We will not accept blood money. We will pursue justice no matter the cost. I have authorized Admiral Hyunwoo to begin full military mobilization. Every colony, every ship, every resource we have. The Vrekith Empire believes we will back down because we are smaller, weaker. They do not understand humanity. We do not bend to threats. We do not surrender our principles for convenience, and we do not forgive the murder of innocents. To the Vrekith Empire I say this, you will face justice. To the Galactic Council I say this, we will do what you cannot. And to my fellow humans I say this, stand firm, stand together, and show the galaxy what humanity means. The broadcast ended. Within minutes, responses flooded in from every human colony. Support, solidarity, volunteers signing up for military service. The entire species mobilizing for war. In the Vrekith Empire's capital, Warlord Thaxel watched the human president's speech and laughed. He was in his war room, surrounded by maps and battle plans. His subordinates looked nervous, but Thaxel felt only contempt. These humans, he said, they think courage alone can defeat an empire. I will crush their homeworld personally. I will broadcast their surrender to the entire galaxy. They will learn that the Vrekith bow to no one. He turned to his fleet commanders. Begin preparations. We will show these insects what happens when they defy the Empire. Fleet Admiral Daehyun stood on the bridge of the UHS Indomitable, humanity's largest warship. Through the massive viewport, he could see the orbital shipyards above Earth. Dozens of vessels were being assembled or retrofitted. Cargo haulers were being converted into military transports. Civilian ships were being armed. Every resource humanity possessed was being poured into the war effort. Admiral, the latest reports from the colonies are in, his executive officer said. Handing him a data pad, Daehyun scrolled through the information. New Sol had contributed 15 warships and 40,000 volunteers. Terra Nova sent 12 ships and construction materials for defensive platforms. Horizon's Edge, the furthest human colony, was fortifying its position and preparing for the worst. What about the intelligence reports? Daehyun asked. Any movement from the Vrekith? Nothing yet, sir. But our scouts report increased activity in their border systems. They're gathering their forces. Daehyun nodded. The calm before the storm. He had spent 30 years in the Navy, working his way up from a junior officer to fleet admiral. He had trained for every possible scenario, but this was different. This wasn't a simulation or a minor border skirmish. This was total war against a superior enemy. He pulled up the tactical map, studying the positions of human and Vrekith forces. The numbers weren't good. Even with every ship they could muster, humanity was outnumbered and outgunned. Traditional military doctrine said they should negotiate, find a diplomatic solution. But President Somin had made the decision, and Daehyun agreed with it completely. Some lines couldn't be crossed. Some crimes couldn't be forgiven. Initiate Operation Iron Wall, he ordered. Deploy defensive platforms at every colony. Set up sensor networks along all our borders. I want to know the moment a Vrekith ship enters human space. Yes, sir. On the research station orbiting Mars, Dr. Hana worked through the night. She was the director of the human military's Advanced Weapons Division. Before the Kora Station massacre, her projects had been focused on peaceful exploration and defensive systems. Now everything had changed. Her team had pulled dozens of old designs from the archives, weapons that had been considered too aggressive for peacetime. Too dangerous, too brutal. But war had different rules. The railgun prototypes are ready for testing, one of her assistants reported, and the kinetic bombardment satellites are being deployed to strategic positions throughout the solar system. Hana examined the data on her screen. The kinetic weapons were simple but devastating. Large tungsten rods that would be dropped from orbit, accelerating to incredible speeds before impact. They had been developed centuries ago during Earth's own wars but had been dismantled during the peace era. Now they were being rebuilt and improved. If the Vrekith came to Earth, they would find it defended by weapons that could crack continents. What about the experimental shield modifications? Hana asked. Still testing. The harmonics are tricky, but if we can get it working, our ships will be able to survive direct hits that would normally be fatal. Keep working on it. We need every advantage we can get. At the edge of human space, Commander Yunji piloted her stealth reconnaissance ship through the darkness. She was deep in Vrekith territory, gathering intelligence on their military preparations. It was dangerous work. If they detected her ship, she would be dead within seconds, but the information she was gathering was vital. Through her long-range scanners, she watched massive Vrekith fleet formations conducting war exercises. She counted ships, noted their weapons configurations, tracked their movement. Patterns. 3 main battle groups, she whispered into her recorder. Approximately 200 ships each. They're drilling invasion tactics. Looks like they're planning a 3-pronged assault. She marked the coordinates and transmitted the data back to Earth, using a tight beam communication system that was nearly impossible to detect. Then she moved on, shadowing another Rekith fleet. Back on Earth, civilian engineer Junho oversaw the conversion of commercial vessels into military support ships. The work was exhausting, running 20-hour days, but no one complained. Everyone had seen the footage from Chorus Station. Everyone knew what was at stake. These cargo haulers, Junho explained to a group of military officers, we can't turn them into warships. They don't have the structural integrity for heavy weapons, but we can equip them with point defense systems and use them as supply vessels. They can carry ammunition, fuel, spare parts, keep our fighting ships supplied during extended operations. One of the officers nodded. How many can you convert? Working at current pace? Maybe 50 by the end of the month. 100 if we can get more workers and materials. You'll have whatever you need. The president has authorized unlimited resources for the war effort. Junho looked at the officer seriously. Sir, are we really going to fight them? The Rekith Empire. Yes. And we can win? The officer was quiet for a moment. I don't know. But we're going to try, because the alternative is accepting that might makes right. That powerful species can murder weaker ones without consequence. If we let that stand, what does that say about who we are? Junho understood. He turned back to his work with renewed determination. At the Galactic Council headquarters, Ambassador Jiwon sat in her office, reviewing diplomatic messages. Most of them were from other species, quietly expressing sympathy for humanity's situation but offering no real support. A few were more direct, warning her that humanity was making a terrible mistake. One message was different. It came from the Quillian Federation, a small alliance of peaceful species. They had no military to speak of, but they had sent a short note. We remember when our world faced extinction. No one helped us then. We survived alone. May your courage inspire others. It wasn't much, but it meant something. Someone out there understood. Her assistant entered the office. Ambassador, the council chairman, is requesting another meeting. He wants to discuss mediation options. Tell him humanity's position hasn't changed. He says the Rekith are massing their fleets. War is imminent. This might be the last chance for a peaceful resolution. Jiwon set down the datapad and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Rekith were preparing to attack. Human colonies would soon be under assault. People would die. Maybe humanity would be destroyed. But at least they would fall fighting for something that mattered. Send the chairman my reply, she said. Humanity will not negotiate with murderers. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever. President Soman gave one final address to the human worlds before the war began. She stood in the presidential office, the earth visible through the window behind her. My fellow humans, the moment we have been preparing for is almost here. Intelligence reports indicate that the Rekith Empire will launch their attack within days. They believe they will crush us quickly. They believe fear will drive us to surrender. They are wrong. We are not afraid. We are angry. We are determined. And we are united in a way humanity has never been before. Every colony, every ship, every person standing together for a single purpose, justice. I won't lie to you. The coming days will be hard. We will suffer losses. We may lose battles, but we will not lose our humanity. We will not become like them. We fight not for conquest or glory, but for the principle that innocent lives matter, that murder cannot go unpunished. To every soldier preparing for combat, you carry humanity's honor with you. Fight bravely, fight wisely, and know that billions of people stand behind you. To every civilian on our colonies, stay strong. Follow evacuation procedures if your world comes under attack. Trust in our military to defend you. And to the Rekith Empire, you made a grave error at Chorus Station. You believed that killing innocents would go unanswered. You believed humanity would accept money in exchange for justice. You believed wrong. We are coming, and we do not forgive. The broadcast ended. Across human space, military forces moved into final positions. Defensive platforms activated. Ships powered up their weapons systems. Families said goodbye to soldiers departing for the front lines. In the Rekith capital, Warlord Thaxel reviewed his invasion plans one last time. 3 fleets, 3 targets, simultaneous strikes designed to overwhelm human defenses. After the colonies fell, His forces would converge on Earth itself. The human homeworld would burn, and the galaxy would remember what happened to species who defied the Rekith Empire. "Begin the operation," he ordered. Across the border, Rekith ships powered up their jump drives. 600 warships prepared to enter human space. The largest military operation the Rekith Empire had launched in a generation. They expected an easy victory. They expected humanity to crumble. They were about to learn they were wrong. The warning came at 0400 hours. Across human space, sensors detected massive energy signatures, jump drives activating. Hundreds of them. The Rekith were coming. At New Sol Colony, Fleet Admiral Daehyun watched his tactical display as enemy ships materialized in system. 230 Rekith warships appeared in formation, their weapons already charging. His own fleet numbered 85 ships positioned in the shadow of the colony's massive asteroid field. "All ships, this is Admiral Daehyun. Hold your positions. Wait for my command." The Rekith fleet began its approach, moving in the standard Imperial formation. They expected resistance, but they expected to overwhelm it quickly. They had done this dozens of times before to other species. Arrive in force. Crush the defenders. Demand surrender. But Daehyun had no intention of fighting a traditional battle. Deploy the mines, he ordered, and activate the asteroid base weapons. Hidden throughout the asteroid field, hundreds of automated mine clusters activated. The Rekith vanguard flew directly into the trap. Explosions rippled through their formation. Ships reeled from the unexpected assault. Several smaller vessels were destroyed immediately. "Now, all ships attack pattern Delta." The human fleet burst from the asteroid field, firing as they emerged. They didn't meet the Rekith head-on. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics, striking at the disrupted enemy formation before breaking away. Daehyun's flagship targeted the Rekith command vessel specifically, knocking out their coordination. The Rekith commander, caught off guard, tried to reorganize his forces. But the human ships were faster, more maneuverable. They used the asteroids as cover, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. "Target their engines," Daehyun commanded. "Disable them. Force them to stay in the kill zone." The battle raged for 6 hours. The humans lost 12 ships, but the Rekith lost 43 with dozens more damaged. Finally, the Rekith commander ordered a retreat to regroup. The first assault on New Sol had failed. At Terra Nova, Captain Yuna commanded the defense fleet from her cruiser. She had been promoted after surviving Chorus Station, given command despite her relatively low rank. She had earned it with blood. When the Rekith fleet appeared, numbering over 200 ships, Yuna's response was immediate and aggressive. Her fleet numbered only 60 ships, but she had no intention of defending passively. "All ships, formation Gamma. We're going straight at them." Her second-in-command looked shocked. "Captain, they outnumber us 3-1. "I know. That's why they won't expect us to attack. Launch all fighters and prepare torpedo salvos. Target their carriers first." The human fleet accelerated directly toward the Rekith formation. The enemy commander, confused by this suicidal-seeming tactic, hesitated. That hesitation cost him. Yuna's fighters swept through the Rekith lines, targeting their larger carrier ships. Torpedoes streaked through space. 3 Rekith carriers exploded in rapid succession. Without their fighter support, the Rekith formation became vulnerable. "All ships, break formation. Engage at will. Make them chase us." The human ships scattered, each vessel becoming an independent hunter. The Rekith tried to coordinate their response, but Yuna's captains were experienced and aggressive. They struck hard and fast, then vanished before the Rekith could concentrate their fire. But the numbers were against them. One by one, human ships were destroyed. Yuna watched her fleet shrink on the tactical display. 20 ships, 15, 10. "All remaining vessels fall back to the secondary defense line," she ordered. Her voice was calm, but inside she was screaming. So many good people dying. But they were buying time. The civilians were evacuating. The military installations were being protected. When the Rekith finally broke through, they found Terra Nova's defenses waiting. Orbital platforms opened fire. Ground-based weapons launched missiles. The battle became a brutal grind. Yuna's ship took heavy damage. Half her crew was dead or wounded. Her weapons were offline. But she kept fighting, using her ship as a battering ram against a Rekith destroyer. Both ships were crippled in the collision. As her crew evacuated, Yuna stayed on the bridge, coordinating the remaining defenses. She thought of Taiho, of Chorus Station, of all the people the Rekith had murdered. You wanted a war, she whispered. You've got one. At Horizon's Edge, Commander Yunji executed her plan perfectly. When the Rekith fleet jumped in to attack the colony, they found it defended by only a small garrison. They moved in for the kill, confident and careless. They didn't know that Yunji had taken her strike force around behind them. She had jumped to the Rekith staging area 3 hours before their invasion fleet even left. Her ships waited in the dark, powered down and invisible. When the Rekith supply convoy arrived, expecting to resupply the invasion force, they found death instead. Yunji's fleet appeared from nowhere and tore through the lightly defended transports. Fuel, ammunition, spare parts, food, all destroyed. Good work, Yunji told her pilots. Now for Phase 2. Her ships jumped back to Horizon's Edge, but not to the colony. They appeared behind the Rekith invasion fleet, cutting off their retreat. The Rekith were now caught between Horizon's Edge defenses ahead and Yunji's force behind. The Rekith commander panicked. Without supplies and trapped in a pincer, he ordered his ships to break out. But Yunji had planned for that too. Minefields blocked the escape routes. The Rekith fleet took heavy casualties trying to flee. By the time they escaped, they had lost over 30 ships and accomplished nothing. Horizon's Edge remained secure. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council watched the battles unfold. The council chamber was filled with shocked silence. Humanity should have been crushed in the first hour. Their colonies should have fallen immediately. Instead, they had held. All 3 colonies remained in human hands. The Rekith had been bloodied at every front. How is this possible? One ambassador asked. The humans are outnumbered. Their technology is not superior. How are they winning? Ambassador Ji-won, watching from the human delegation's platform, allowed herself a small smile. Because we're not fighting for conquest or glory. We're fighting for survival, for justice, and we're willing to pay any price. On the Rekith flagship, Warlord Thaxel raged at his commanders. The reports from all 3 fronts were humiliating. His forces had been repelled, damaged. The humans had fought with unexpected ferocity and skill. This is unacceptable, he roared. They are insects. They should have been crushed. One of his subordinates, braver than the others, spoke up. Warlord, the humans are using unconventional tactics. They're not fighting the way we expected. They sacrifice ships to disable ours. They use their environment as a weapon. They fight without fear. Then we will teach them fear, Thaxel snarled. Recall all forces. We will combine our fleets and strike at the heart of their civilization. We will attack Earth itself. When their homeworld burns, they will beg for mercy. He pulled up a star map, marking the route to Earth. Gather every ship we have, every soldier, every weapon. We will end this war in one decisive blow. His commanders saluted and left to carry out his orders. Thaxel stared at the map, at the small blue world that was humanity's birthplace. He would destroy it. He would make an example of the human so complete that no species would ever dare defy the Rekith again. On Earth, President Soman received the intelligence reports. All 3 colonies had held, but at great cost. Hundreds of ships destroyed, thousands of soldiers dead. The Rekith were regrouping, and all indicators suggested they were preparing for a massive assault. They're coming here, Admiral Hyunwoo said quietly. All of them. The entire Rekith fleet will converge on Earth. President Soman looked at the casualty reports, at the names of the dead. So many sacrifices already. And the worst was yet to come. Then we prepare to defend our home, she said. Recall every ship we can spare from the colonies. Activate all orbital defenses. And send a message to our people. Tell them the final battle is coming. She stood and walked to the window, looking up at the sky. Somewhere out there, hundreds of alien warships were preparing to destroy everything humanity had built. To murder billions of people. To end human civilization. But they would find that Earth was not helpless. That humanity did not surrender. That some things were worth dying for. Let them come, she whispered. We'll be ready. The Rekith Armada arrived at Earth like a swarm of locusts. Over 400 warships materialized at the edge of the solar system, their combined mass blocking out stars, It was the largest fleet the Rekith Empire had ever assembled. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Enough soldiers to conquer 100 worlds. On Earth, alarms sounded. Billions of people looked up at the sky, knowing that death was coming. But there was no panic, no riots, no chaos. Humanity had chosen this path with open eyes. They would face the consequences together. Admiral Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of Earth's orbital defense station, surrounded by tactical displays showing the approaching enemy. The human defense fleet gathered around Earth numbered 140 ships. Every vessel that could fight had been recalled from the colonies. It wasn't nearly enough. Admiral, incoming transmission from the Rekith flagship, his communications officer reported. Put it through. Warlord Thaxel's face appeared on the main screen. He looked confident, almost bored. Humans, this is your final opportunity. Surrender now. Open your defenses. Allow my troops to occupy your world peacefully. Do this, and I will spare your civilians. Admiral Hyunwoo studied the alien warlord who had murdered so many innocents at Chorus Station, who had laughed while executing unarmed scientists, who now expected humanity to bow down in fear. No, Hyunwoo said simply. Thaxel's expression hardened. You cannot win. My fleet outnumbers yours 3-1. Your world will burn, your people will die, all because of your pride. It's not pride, Hyunwoo replied. It's principle. You murdered innocents. You expected us to accept payment and forget. You were wrong. Justice isn't negotiable. Then you will die for your principles. Thaxel cut the transmission. Hyunwoo turned to his crew. All ships, battle stations, activate all orbital defenses, power up the kinetic platforms, and send a message to President Salmon. Tell her we're beginning. The Rekith fleet advanced in a massive wedge formation, designed to smash through any defense. But as they entered weapons range, Earth's orbital platforms opened fire. Hundreds of railguns and missile batteries unleashed their fury. The space around Earth lit up with weapons fire. The Rekith shields absorbed the initial barrage, but several smaller ships were destroyed. The fleet continued forward, returning fire. Human defensive platforms exploded one by one, but they were buying time. Deploy the inner fleet, Hyunwoo ordered. Formation Delta 3. The human ships moved to engage, but they didn't charge directly at the enemy. Instead, they formed defensive spheres around key orbital installations, creating overlapping fields of fire. The Rekith would have to fight through multiple layers of defense. On the Rekith flagship, Thaxel watched the human tactics with growing frustration. They weren't fighting like a desperate, dying species. They were fighting smart, disciplined. Every move calculated to inflict maximum casualties. All ships concentrate fire on Sector 7. Break through their line and target the defense stations. The Rekith fleet pushed forward. The battle intensified. Ships on both sides exploded. Debris filled the space around Earth. The planet's orbit became a graveyard. Then Daehyun's fleet arrived from New Seoul. 90 ships, battered but functional, jumped in behind the Rekith formation. Daehyun had pushed his crews to the breaking point, making the journey in record time. All ships target their rear guard, hit them hard. The fresh human forces crashed into the Rekith from behind. Suddenly, the Rekith were fighting on two fronts. Their formation began to break apart. Thaxel roared in fury. Where did they come? From? I thought all their forces were here. They must have left the colonies undefended, warlord. Fools. We'll destroy them here and take the colonies later. All ships reform. Concentrate on the newcomers. But before the Rekith could reorganize, another human fleet appeared. Captain Yuna, who should have been dead, arrived with the survivors from Terra Nova. Her ship was held together with emergency patches and prayers, but her weapons still worked. Sorry we're late, Admiral, Yuna transmitted to Hyunwoo. We had some engine trouble. Hyunwoo couldn't help but smile. Better late than never, Captain. Welcome to the party. Now the Rekith were surrounded. Human ships attacked from 3 directions, but they still had superior numbers. The battle became a brutal slugging match, ship against ship, each side refusing to give ground. Dr. Hana, watching from the Mars research station, activated her secret weapon. Throughout the solar system, hundreds of kinetic bombardment satellites came online. They had been positioned weeks ago, hidden and silent, waiting for this moment. Targeting solution confirmed, she said to her team. Firing. Tungsten rods, each weighing several tons, dropped from orbit. They accelerated to incredible speeds, becoming weapons of devastating power. The first wave struck the Wrecketh fleet from above. Ships that had focused their shields forward and to the sides suddenly found themselves defenseless against attacks from an unexpected angle. Dozens of Wrecketh ships were crippled or destroyed in seconds. The kinetic weapons continued falling, a rain of metal death that tore through the enemy formation. "What is that?" Thaxel shouted. "Where are those weapons coming from?" One of his officers checked the sensors, his face going pale. "Satellites, Warlord. They've covered the entire solar system with weapons platforms. We're sitting in a kill zone." Thaxel realized too late that he had made a terrible mistake. He had brought his entire fleet to Earth expecting an easy victory. But the humans had turned their own star system into a fortress. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid potentially hiding weapons. "Fall back. Reform at the outer system. We need to—" He never finished the sentence. Commander Yunji, leading her strike force, had been waiting in the asteroid belt. Her ships appeared directly alongside the Wrecketh flagship, weapons already firing at point-blank range. The flagship's shields collapsed under the concentrated assault. Explosions rippled across its hull. Yunji's ships poured everything they had into the massive vessel. On the bridge of the dying flagship, Thaxel felt his ship shaking apart around him. Fire spread through the corridors. Systems failed. His crew was dying. He pulled himself to the communications console, preparing to order a retreat. But Captain Yuna's ship appeared in front of his viewport. She had pursued him specifically, tracking his flagship through the chaos of battle. Yuna's face appeared on his screen. She looked exhausted, covered in blood and burns, but her eyes were cold and hard. "Remember Cora Station," she said. "Remember every person you murdered." "Wait," Thaxel shouted. "I surrender. Mercy. I beg for mercy." Yuna thought of Taiho, of all the scientists who had begged this same creature for mercy. He had laughed at them, executed them without hesitation. "You taught us something important," Yuna said quietly. "Sometimes mercy is a weakness. Sometimes justice requires something harder." She gave the order. Her ship's main cannon fired. The Wrecketh flagship exploded, splitting in half. Warlord Thaxel and everyone aboard died instantly. With their leader dead and their formation shattered, the Wrecketh fleet began to break. Ships fled in every direction, abandoning the battle. The human forces pursued, destroying as many as they could. But eventually Admiral Hyunwoo called off the chase. "Let them go," he ordered. "Let them spread the word about what happened here." Of the 400 Wrecketh ships that had attacked Earth, fewer than 200 escaped. They fled back to their empire, carrying news of their devastating defeat. The humans, outnumbered and outgunned, had won. Across the galaxy, species watched in shock. The impossible had happened. The Wrecketh Empire, one of the most powerful military forces in known space, had been defeated by a smaller, younger civilization. The Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session. The chamber was packed with ambassadors, all wanting to understand what had just happened. Ambassador Jiwon returned to the human platform, but this time the room was silent when she spoke. "The Wrecketh Empire committed an atrocity at Cora Station," she said. "We demanded justice. The council suggested we negotiate. Accept payment, move on. We refused." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of the various alien representatives. "Humanity has proven something today. We've proven that moral principles matter, that justice matters, that innocent lives cannot be purchased or bargained away. We've proven that courage and determination can overcome superior numbers. The Galactic Council failed us, failed to stand up for what was right, failed to support justice. So humanity stood alone, and we won." She pulled up a holographic display showing the survivors of Cora Station, the few dozen people who had escaped. And then she showed the casualty counts from the war. Human casualties, thousands dead, hundreds of ships destroyed. "This is what justice cost us," Jiwon said. "We paid it willingly, because some things matter more than safety, more than comfort, more than survival itself." The Zelthari chairman spoke carefully. "Ambassador Jiwon, what does humanity want now? Will you pursue the war into Wrecketh territory?" "No," Jiwon said, surprising everyone. "We're not conquerors. We don't want their worlds, but we do want justice. Humanity demands that the Galactic Council establish a war crimes tribunal, We want every Vrekith commander involved in the Chorus Station massacre tried and punished. We want laws established so this never happens again. And if the Council refuses, then humanity will establish these things ourselves, and will invite every species who believes in justice to join us. The Council can either lead this change or become irrelevant. The vote was swift. The Council, shocked by humanity's victory and the implications of their determination, voted to establish the first interstellar war crimes tribunal. 37 species voted in favor. Only 3 abstained. None voted against. On Earth, President Soman addressed her people one final time. She stood before a memorial wall listing all the humans who had died in the war. Thousands of names, thousands of families who had lost someone. The price of justice we won, she said simply. But victory tastes bitter when bought with such sacrifice. We will remember every person who died in this war. We will honor their courage. We will tell their stories. The galaxy thought we would break. That fear would drive us to compromise our principles. They were wrong. Humanity has shown that moral courage is not weakness. That standing up for what's right, even when it's costly, even when it's dangerous, is what defines us. We have changed the galaxy. Other species are watching, learning. They've seen that justice is possible. That the strong cannot simply prey on the weak without consequence. That courage matters. To those we lost, your sacrifice was not in vain. To those who survived, your courage will be remembered. And to the galaxy, this is humanity. We do not negotiate with murderers. We do not accept evil for convenience. And we will always stand for justice. Years later, a rebuilt Chorus Station orbited the same moon where the original had been destroyed. It was now a memorial and a symbol. The galaxy's first monument to the principle that innocent lives matter. Captain Yuna stood before the memorial wall, looking at her brother's name. Taiho, xenobiologist, age 27, murdered at Chorus Station. We did it, she whispered. Justice was served. Behind her, ships from dozens of species arrived and departed. Chorus Station was no longer just a human facility. It had become a meeting place for all species who believed in something greater than power. A place where justice, not strength, was the highest law. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity had taught it well. Some lines cannot be crossed. Some crimes cannot be forgiven. And some species, when pushed, will fight for what's right no matter the cost. The Vrekith Empire never recovered its former power. Their survivors told stories of the humans who fought without fear, who chose death over dishonor. Other species, inspired by humanity's example, began standing up to oppression in their own regions of space. And at the center of it all was humanity. Young, small, but possessing something that had changed the galaxy forever. The absolute conviction that justice matters more than survival, that some principles are worth dying for, that evil must be confronted